This week, the pursuit of creativity brought me to artist Jordan Moss. In addition to being a poet, musician, and graphic designer, Jordan has carved out a really unique niche of content creation for business and creators alike. In this episode, we talk about the importance of creating entertaining content, the highs and lows of using social media for promotion, and how his sobriety affected his craft. My name is Ikey, and welcome to the Pursuit of Creativity podcast. I am so excited to have my friend Jay Moss on the podcast. We've been friends for since high school, so over 10 years now, and he has built up such an amazing and brilliant creative ecosystem of things from music to content creation, all that kind of good stuff. So without further ado, I want to introduce my buddy Jay Moss to the show. And why don't you give our listeners just a little overview of like who you are, like what your name is. Obviously I already said it, but like where you're at, and what you do and how you describe your job to people.
Name's Jordan Moss. I live in Rochester, New York. And what I normally tell people is just that I do a little bit of everything because, yeah, I mean, for how I pay rent and stuff is I do content creation and graphic design for different clients of mine. But I also make music, score things, just work all around in that area, and then other creative things like just helping out friends' brands and, you know, just a little bit of everything. I like to
a little
say.
bit of everything.
Yeah.
I like that. So one thing I want to try to do with this podcast is like you described it pretty well there, but a lot of people in this creative world like struggle to explain their job to like their mom or like older people. So if you had to break it down even more simply to someone that has no clue about any of that stuff, how would you describe it?
Digital marketing, digital promotion.
Perfect.
If that was like what I had to limit what I do for rent, how I pay the bills, I would say digital marketing.
Love that. How did you get started? I know from our time as friends, you have always been in the music biz, and that has evolved over the years. When did you kind of make the jump to more content creation for your videos on your Instagram are all super creative and stuff. So obviously you've been doing that for a while, but when did you make the jump to doing it for other people?
I was working behind a bar, and I guess it's like maybe like a cocky thing to have in mind. But when I was working there, I was like looking at the social media and I was like, I feel like I could do this better. Or more so, like I thought that I could bring something to the table. I think everybody who does like content creation sees a business that's like they're kind of doing it, or usually like what the way that I feel like a lot of content people get in their foot in the door is like definitely always somebody who is like not very well versed in making content is doing the social media, and you're like, oh boy, we need some work here. So then like you kind of step in and you try to help out, and that's what I did. I kind of just thought maybe I could do it better, and then I started working with this one restaurant. The people that own that restaurant own several restaurants in Rochester, and then I kind of pitched myself up. Like I created sort of a job position. Like there was not a social media manager at that time. They didn't really like think that was something that had value. So I pitched myself as like, why don't I run multiple of your accounts? Like, why don't I do promotion for other places? Like, I think I could do that as well. So, yeah. And then when it came to like graphic design, which, that was literally just one day they had a cocktail that they wanted to promote, and I had an idea for, I just saw something in my mind and I was like, well, how am I going to do this? I don't have Photoshop or whatever. I don't know how to do that. So I downloaded an app, and then I just figured out I just figured it out on my app, and then I do everything on my phone. I do video editing. I do graphic design. It's all done on my phone. Photos, video.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I mean, what you just said, I feel like is something that is really encouraging because being able to like take a creative idea and then like not even worrying about if you can like achieve it, and then just figuring it out.
Yeah.
And like finding the resources you need to make that, like create that.
Yeah.
I think that's really encouraging. So correct me if I'm wrong, but you don't have any like quote unquote formal training in like graphic design or videography or anything like that. Like you learned it all on the go.
Nope. I watch a lot of movies. That inspires me. I just like, yeah, I mean, the same way that anybody who, I guess, when you're making content and stuff like that nowadays, it's like, especially with TikTok, some of these videos are like on the same level as like a Marvel movie or whatever. I don't know, like a major like action film or like a drama, or I mean, so I think you gotta just like watch stuff that's gonna inspire you, even if it's just literally for a funny like little promo for a company. Like you, and if you want to rip off like a certain movie or whatever, you got to watch the movie. You got to understand, like, there was one time where somebody wanted me to like do a party because it's like a Swilberger Playhouse, and they were doing like a Pee-wee's Playhouse themed thing. I was like, I've never watched that show, so I went and watched the show, got a vibe for it, and was like, okay, I can use this, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes you gotta, the desire to create has to be there. And then even if you don't know what the hell you're doing, like, you got to just figure out a way to pull it off. I think that's just what any entrepreneurial person is doing. We're all just kind of like bullshitting and just throwing stuff at the wall until stuff sticks. But then you start to realize that the stuff that's sticking is like, there's a reason for it, because you're learning and you're getting better, and you're, like you said earlier, like you're creating solutions on the fly.
Totally. I think, you know, because I'm the same way. Like, I went to school for marketing, but like I learned video and all that other stuff just like YouTube. So many YouTube videos.
Yeah.
And I would love your take. Do you think it's an advantage in some way, shape, or form to not have a traditional background in it? Like, you have to kind of, and like in my opinion, like if you didn't go to like film school or videography school or graphic design school, you have to be a lot more creative to kind of figure out how to make these things work, and you're not limited by, you know, oh well, this is a rule, like I can't do that. Like, we don't even have those thoughts when you don't like have those parameters. Right.
I was just watching the It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia podcast, and they did a whole episode where they actually just talked about acting. That was all they just talked about how they got into acting and why they did. Like, the dude who plays Dennis is actually a Juilliard trained actor. Like, which like a lot of people don't even know. But Charlie Day, he had a point where like he was like, I had a crossroads where it was like I could have gone to Juilliard, could have had classical training, and he's like, but I was already getting gigs, and I already had a manager. So he's like, I just kind of went with the vibe of like, I think I can just do this. I don't need that. And to me, I think that's a really good analogy for like, when you start creating and you don't have the classical training, like, of course you don't understand certain things like the rule of thirds, and like those are the kind of things you need to like research and figure out for yourself. But if you don't know where the edges of the painting are, you can just keep painting and not have to feel worried about being compressed down. You know, that's why I like never wanted to go to like Eastman School of Music or something like that, because it just seemed like it took something that I love and just made it unfun, and kind of like would compress you and tell you you're not good enough and that piece could be better. And yeah, sure, that stuff helps and you learn a lot, but it also like, it can kind of like knock the wind out of your sails. I've seen a lot of friends go to school for what they wanted to do and actually become really disenchanted from it and kind of feel like, oh, this isn't really, I'm not that interested in this anymore, because you're kind of like watching the wind get knocked out of their sails kind of thing. So
yeah, no, I think you hit the nail on the head there with that. Like, it's a weird balance, because obviously there are people being on both sides of it. But I definitely tend to lean more toward the, you know, figure it out, and it might actually be more beneficial that way. You can always learn those other things along the way, you know?
Yeah. And if you want to go back and you want, and you don't know Photoshop, like I've been thinking about like just buying the subscription or whatever, and just started getting on YouTube. And like, what I want to do is like, I want to take a flyer that I've made just on my phone and just try to recreate it in Photoshop. And I think that's going to be like a really easy way to be like, oh, okay, that button does this. That's the equivalent. Totally. That's kind of how I learned how to use like Logic Pro. I was using GarageBand on my laptop, and then somebody was like, you know, the same people make Logic, right? Like the same people that make GarageBand make Logic. And I was like, no, I didn't know that. So then when I started using Logic, a lot of it was very crossover. It was like, oh, if I press this button, it does that same thing that it did in GarageBand, but this is just the equivalent of it. So, you know, you can go back and learn all that stuff if you want, but, you know, I think just get started is the main goal. with anybody
100%.
creative.
I mean, I've done that same thing where I'll like
Yeah.
recreate the same thing in like multiple things just to be like, oh, okay, maybe I won't need to use this all the time, but now I know I can at least do it in this other format or other way or whatever.
Sure.
So like you started out, at least back in high school, and then that kind of stuff, like big on the music scene, right? How would you say making music, performing music, and all that stuff has played into where you're at now as like a content creator?
I wouldn't say I was like big in the music scene. I would say I was attempting to be a part of a music scene that I feel like is more relevant now than it was when I started out. I feel like maybe now if I was trying to do what I was doing then, that I'd be even more tapped in now. But I don't know. I think like what's interesting is that the content creation stuff is not something that I'm as passionate about as music. So for me, like I do love it, but I almost have always seen them as like very separate. I guess like the one connective tissue is that for content creation for myself, I didn't know anybody who was a videographer. I didn't know anybody who was an editor, and basically like my whole like musical interests and stuff like that has always just come down to me just being by myself. I've tried to do bands and I've tried to like involve other people, and I think I've realized that I'm always the most reliable person for myself. So I just have to I just do a lot of things by myself. So yeah, I guess the music stuff, having to promote music and put it out, now it's like a full production. You're not just like, you're not just a rapper, you're not just a R&B singer or whatever. You're the photographer, you're the editor, you're the, you have to have like a whole small army to like get your music out now. So
That's so true.
I think that kind of definitely influenced just me already being interested in creating stuff. But really where I do find where I do get excited though with content creation is helping out certain clients. Like the clients that I have, I haven't signed on to a thing where, oh, you just work for all these different restaurants or just whatever, but I have a very varied client list. So I love helping out people that just need more exposure and don't have the time to create it themselves. That's probably where I'm the most excited about. Sorry, I rambled off of your
No, we
question.
love a good ramble. That's where you get the good nuggets of information from people.
Or just delusions of grandeur.
Delusion's important for this world, for this life we're living
I
here.
think you need to be delusional a little bit too. Betting on yourself is a little well, people will make you think that it's delusional. It's not. I mean,
yeah.
they'll make you think that you're crazy or why are you doing that? Why are you wasting your time on that? And yeah, sometimes you waste your time on something for 5 years and it's the wrong thing. But I think you got to bet on yourself no matter what.
Totally.
As corny as that is.
It's corny and it's cliche, but I'm all for that kind of stuff. I made a TikTok basically saying that same thing. It was like, to be successful, you have to be delusional because like statistically, like you have to like think beyond how like the chance of you making it. Like you have to like be like, I'm gonna do it regardless, and I don't care what anyone else says. And as like, especially as like I would say self-employed folks, you have to believe in yourself because like who else is going to,
Yeah. If I listened to my parents, I wouldn't be doing, or I guess I would probably be doing something even more stable or whatever. But I wanted to get to a point of stability on my own. And I did that recently. So it feels really good to finally feel a little bit more secure with what I'm doing and locking in. But I think what you've done with your TikTok is incredible. I don't think you just create, you put silly stuff on there and you put like really cute stuff with your girlfriend and things like that. But I think also you've really put some poignant, really relevant stuff to where we're at as a society right now, and made a lot of not just commenting on it uselessly, but really putting some poignant thought onto a kind of mindless media site. You know what I mean? I think a lot of media sites now, a lot of people are just like reposting stuff and not thinking about it, but the people who are actually putting thought in and really care about what it is they're talking about, that's kind of like where I want to be. I want to be making stuff that's really causing people to think a little bit.
Yeah, well, for one, I appreciate the compliment. That's very kind of you, for sure. And to that point, maybe I can jump off of that. Like, what you said you want to maybe make stuff like that. Do you have a dream, like 5 years from now? Like, are you making content for a bunch of bigger brands in the area? Are you doing more stuff for yourself, more stuff with like the music you're doing? Where do you kind of see yourself in a couple years?
I'd definitely like to just be taking more on doing stuff for myself, creating music or scoring music for film or something like that. Or if I was going to go further into video stuff, I would probably get more interested in sort of documentary / interview things. One of my clients is my friend's company, Liba Spirits, and we created this series called the Indie Spirit Series, where we interview different entrepreneurs, artists, musicians in Rochester. And even though like we've just done those, like we usually take a 20-minute interview and then I'm cutting it into like a 1.5-minute reel. But we sit there and chat with them for 20 minutes. And I think I've really started to enjoy the long form interview quite a lot. So maybe it'd be a mix of, talking about music with people or, something like that. But definitely just more of a focus on me putting out more music and working with artists. I also work with this artist Ishmael in Rochester, a rapper, singer. He does everything. He has a clothing brand. So working with him is also definitely in the future, and other artists like him.
I love that. Is there, to the point of like who you work with? Obviously, when you're starting out, you kind of will take. I definitely take what I could get when I was just doing like videos and things like that. You have to. Yeah, you gotta you
have to eat shit. Like, oh wait, can we swear on the podcast?
Sure.
If you don't want it, that's totally fine. I can edit, but you do have to eat a little bit of shit.
Yeah, no, I agree. You got to just to get like putting a video reel together or whatever it is. Like you have to kind of take what you can get at first. Yeah. But to that point, do you have, like you were just talking about that artist? Do you have like a ideal client that you would, if you had all the money in the world and you got to just choose who you got to work with? Do you have like a type of business or a type of person that you would ideally want to make content for?
I feel like I'm already doing that with a couple people, just because some of my clients, like my friend's he has a natural wine retail store. That's the first of its kind in upstate New York, and definitely the only one in like, close to like the closest one you probably would have to go to that's like fully dedicated to natural wine would be like in New York City. So working with him is great because he just kind of like, I'll just come in with a crazy idea. Like today you guys are going to be in a musical. They're just like, okay. So working with people who are just really fully ready to just like dive in. And the funny thing is that the owner Brandon, his wife Erin, and their employee Joe, they just started, it's called Eldeskeller Wine Company. They just opened like in June, I believe, of last year. So they haven't been around that long, but they've also like, I've kind of put them through their paces like with acting. So they've done skits and they've had to like give dramatic performances, and they are kind of like the dream client in the sense that like I can come up with anything. One time I came in, I was like, okay, for Christmas, since you guys are going on vacation and Joe's staying here, we're going to recreate scenes from Home Alone. And they're like, yes. Okay. It's like, all right, you guys are running out the door. All right, act, like, and they've just gone with it. But yeah, that's like the dream client. It's just anybody who's like just down to, I wrote this song for you. It's your theme song. Here we go. We're going to shoot a thing. Let's roll with it. So
I love that. Yeah. It makes a huge difference when people, one, like trust your creativity and like trust your vibe. And then they also like really lean into it. It make like
it's the leaning in that's really the dream client. Somebody might do your thing that you want to do, but they might not get it or fully commit to it. But yeah, committing really hard, even though they don't really know how it's going to turn out. But then the more that you do, the more that you create with a client or whatever, then they start to know. They're like, it'll look cool, whatever you're going to do, or I know it's going to be edited well, or whatever you're going for. You know what I mean?
Totally. Getting people to trust the process is a process in itself.
For sure. And I was going to say, like, I wanted to say this at some point, but I think I've realized that the key with digital marketing now is, like, the anti-marketing, which means like when we do stuff for the Natural Wine Shop, we barely ever touch on what it is the wines are or what their flavor is. Like we don't, natural wine Instagram is usually people being like, oh, it's a nice Merlot blend, and let's take a sip here. Oh, that's flirty. Wow. So we just have completely done the exact opposite of that. We barely promote the wine, but I think people are more interested in us just doing like silly stuff that doesn't even because you're endearing your brand to people.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I've been in content marketing for a long time now, so it's not a super surprise to me, but it's cool to see so many brands now embracing the fact that they're essentially a small entertainment business within their business.
Sure.
And we need people like you that can go in there and be like, all right, we could have a person sipping wine, or we could do a scene from Home Alone, which is going to make people excited, and they're going to share it, and then people are going to go and actually buy your wine.
Yeah, people have just come in because they're like, that video cracked me up so much. Like, I had to come in. We did a whole one where Brandon was pretending to be like a Hulk Hogan type character or Randy Savage, and he's like, oh, yeah, brother, you got to free your mind. That's what the wine was called, this by Wonderwork. And it was, you got to free your mind. And just because he did that, like, Randy Savage thing, people were like, that was hilarious. I had to come and pick up a bottle. Like, that was so funny. But we didn't really try to promote the bottle. We just thought we were like, what would be a funny way to like do our take on this,
Exactly.
So.
And I think, right in there is a lesson, right? Like if you are having fun making it, or having it makes if whatever you're promoting or making like a video and you enjoy it, there's a good chance other people are going to enjoy it too and connect to it. And that is huge as far as content marketing goes, because it can be hard to like find that balance. So.
Yeah, but people can tell. People can tell when you're not feeling it. People can tell when you're. It's a little bit of a tightrope act, right? Because like it can get exhausting because you're just like long form. You're creating content every week, and if you have multiple clients, you're trying to think of specialized content for every single customer, and it's tough sometimes. But I think like people can definitely tell when you're not feeling it, but then when you tap back into something or you get back in your rhythm, people can also tell that too. So even if like you're making content and you just like feel like no one's vibing on it or the algorithm's just like pushing it down, it's like, whatever, dude, just like keep making stuff. Like people will eventually tap back in, or you know what I mean? Like don't worry about it. Just try to ignore the outside noise as much as possible because it's always wrong.
Totally.
Usually
that is spot on, which I feel like is a good place to pivot. We were just talking about some really good things, really positive things, but I think in every creative's journey, there's some times where I like to call it a main character growth moment. The part in the movie where the character's like getting beaten down and they're like, should I keep going? And what's going to happen? What was that? If you have one, maybe you're just awesome and you just cruise to success. But if you had,
I wish, bro. Jeez Louise.
Yeah, right. Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be great? It's like, oh no, I've had no struggles.
No, because you wouldn't learn anything if you didn't have struggle. Yeah, I think kind of just like more to the point of what I just said about there's just times like over the course of like, I've been working with certain bars and restaurants for like 3 or 4 years. There's times where I'm just like, how many ways can I shoot this cocktail or whatever, you know what I mean? So I think re-engaging in yourself, but I don't know. I think COVID was hard for everybody. That was really tough because no one had any money for graphic design and social media. That was really where they were like, hey, we're going to try to figure this out ourselves. And some people succeeded and some people didn't. And the people who didn't, they were still like, hey, we still need promotion. We still want somebody bringing something to the table for us. And I think just now, like even just recently, I would say people at businesses have started to be like, okay, we're doing a little bit better now after that. And we actually have money for you in our budget now. But yeah, that was pretty tough because no one wanted to, I was like the first person to go.
Right. Yeah.
The content guy, we're not going to be open for 2 years, so we don't really need you.
Yeah, it's like content now? No.
Yeah, right now?
Get him out of here.
We need silly videos right now, and I'm paying you what, a week? Yeah, no thanks.
Yeah,
we're good
exactly.
on that. So, yeah, that was a trying time. But I think just weathering the storm and just, I definitely came close to just getting like a boring job and just kind of doing that. But I really wanted to make things on my own and get back up after that. And yeah.
There's something, I feel like some people get this, some people don't like it, whatever, but there's something inherently exciting about making something all on your own, or
For
like
sure.
building yourself up like that. I like try to explain it to people sometimes. I'm like, it's just like a rush. You're the boss, and it's cool. And some people are like, no, I'm good. Like, I don't want that. I'm like, I get that. It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. Yeah, I mean, there's no shade for anybody who wants to have a boss and wants to work a 9-to-5 job. I definitely didn't see the merit in it when I was younger. I didn't really care about it, but I do understand like the sort of the comfort that having a set schedule and sort of, I mean, I have really bad anxiety, so even talking to people who do have like 9-to-5 jobs, they're like, it really has balanced out my anxiety, just having more things to do. But I've made my own schedule busy recently, so I feel like that will sort of help my brain calm down a bit now that I'm busier, for sure.
Totally. Yeah, there's so many good points. Like this whole podcast is about exploring like unique and like different jobs. But yeah, there's no shade of 9-to-5. I have a 9-to-5, right? Like it's just like, it's cool. And I'm like so excited to show people, because I think for a long time, even myself, even though I worked in the creative space, like I know there's a long time where I was like, this is it. Like I can only do a 9-to-5. And it's like, oh no, there are other options.
Yeah.
Like you can do other things. It's sweet.
For sure.
One thing I wanted to talk about for sure, I saw on your Instagram that you are, if I'm correct, 3 years sober, which is amazing.
January. Thanks,
Congrats.
dude.
That is a huge accomplishment. I love that for you. Can you tell us, if at all, has this affected your creativity? Has this affected your work? In what ways, basically, has this affected kind of anything in those realms?
Yeah, it definitely has. I mean, I've become a more empathetic person, and I think empathy really is kind of like plays in a lot to marketing, because you're thinking about other people's experiences, and you're thinking about where people come from, and you can put yourself a little bit more in other people's shoes. And when you have that in mind, when you're working with clients or whatever, even when you work with a client and somebody gets pissed off or they're in a bad mood or whatever, like a lot of the time I feel myself being like the mini unlicensed therapist for people, because I really definitely try to listen and pay attention. And I think that has affected my work, because not only do I have clients, but I have people that can talk to me about anything. I have people that I'm close to, and working with your friends is difficult sometimes, but I love that. But yeah, it's definitely affected my music, and I've been able to, I mean, I'm writing a book of poetry about, well, I've written books of poetry in the past. They've come out, and I'm glad that they're out there in the world somewhere. But this is a new one where I'm just going to talk about my time drinking. And I've had that thought in my head for like 3 years, so I'm just kind of like I'm like halfway through the book right now. But I'm working on that, and then new music that I'm going to be putting out this month or next month is all stuff sort of almost like geared towards trying to process that time of my life and just who I was and who I am now. It's definitely hard to have those two things where you're like, that was me, but this is also me. It's tough to explain with people who like didn't really have. I think everybody has that time though where they're like, am I drinking too much? Even if you don't have like a problem. Like I have alcoholism because it runs in my family. So for me, it was like this is a little bit more serious than somebody who's like, I just drink a lot. I'm like, this could get like really bad, and it was pretty bad. It was bad, but I definitely probably like saved myself years of my life by quitting when I did, and I quit like right before COVID happened. So
wow. Well, hey, again, shout out to you. That is huge. It's not easy, I would imagine. So I'm glad that it seems like things are moving in a positive way after that. So congrats and cheers to another. Or maybe not cheers.
No, that was actually funny because I was thinking about like hanging out and doing something like the day of my sobriety, and then I was just like, I feel like all my friends would be like, let's go out to celebrate, and I'd be like, go to a bar to celebrate. I mean, I get
Yeah,
mocktails and soda water and stuff. I love going out and being social just as much as the next person. I don't have a
totally.
problem doing it. I mean, two of my clients are bars, so I have to be around it or whatever, but yes, cheers to as many more years.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
Thanks, dude.
And on that note, I mean, that's definitely something to brag about in itself. Like, I think that's amazing, and I'm proud of you, dude. That's awesome.
Yeah.
But I'd also I feel like a lot of content creators or people in any job, they don't get a lot of a big chance to brag and boast about something cool that they've done recently or in the past. So if you have anything, a story or something you want to share about, either with a client, you've already shared a couple cool things like the Home Alone and the wrestling stuff. But if you have anything else you want to brag about, I definitely want to give you some space for that.
I guess I get really excited about stuff. I guess if I'm going to be caught bragging about anything, it's just when I'm really jazzed about something. Like something's happening for me that I'm just super pumped about. There's an opportunity, or I have a new client, or there's a song that I just made with somebody that I'm really pumped about. I'm excited because my friend Ishmael is coming out with an EP in a little bit, and we worked on a couple songs. I don't know what's going to end up on there, but I'm really pumped for one of the ones that's definitely going to come out that we worked on. So that's kind of where I think I don't post a lot of personal stuff on my Instagram.
Yeah.
Just because I feel when you make content for everybody else, when it comes to your own stuff, you're I'm kind of tired here. I need a break.
Yeah.
So I just don't like sharing that much. I don't really feel like people need to know that much. Also, I just feel I don't need to tap in that much with what's happening to me. If I go get a really good burger, I don't really need to tell people about it. I think it's a little ridiculous how people manage their lives that way. But for me, when other clients post my stuff, that's how I'm bragging through my work. I can repost my shit that I've made for somebody else, and I don't have to say anything because you can watch the video, you can watch the interview or whatever it is that I've edited, and you just know that it's my stuff, and you can be like, wow, that's cool, but I don't have to say a word about it. So that's kind of maybe it's silent, humble bragging or something, but I guess that's the calmest way of bragging for me. It's just being this is my work, and that's how I've gotten more clients. It's just they saw what I was doing, they thought it was cool, and they thought I might be able to bring something to their brand or their company or whatever,
Yeah. Letting your work speak for itself. That is an elite level of bragging. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, think about Madlib. As a producer, that guy doesn't say anything. He doesn't have social media, or he does have, I think he has Twitter or something like that. But he went on Twitter one time and he was by the way, I made that whole Freddie Gibbs album on an iPad, and just left it there. Just
yeah.
try and figure that out, producers. I did that whole thing. He could have been lying, but I don't think so. I don't think he'd put that out there like that if he wasn't trying to just stun on everybody and be yeah, figure that out.
100%.
But
I love that. All right, for the last question, I would love to make this an actionable podcast for people that are listening. So if you have any 3 tips to kind of get people moving in the right direction, if they're they hear your story, they're whoa, I want to make content for brands, I want to work with artists, I want to make music, what are 3 tips you could give people? Doesn't have to be elaborate or anything crazy. It could be something super simple, but just 3 things that someone can take away from this podcast and be all right, if I want to do this, I can maybe get the wheels moving.
Yeah. I think one is we already touched on it, but it's just start moving. Staying neutral is a really easy, safe place to be. But if you just got to hit the ground running, and if you just have a concept in your head, or you see a brand, or you have a friend who's doing a thing, and you're you just need help, and I saw Kid Super was talking about this, Colm Delane was talking about this, and he was don't even do it for money. Just start, because it's not really when I started doing content stuff, it wasn't, I mean, it was like, this would be cool if I could get paid to do this, but I really just started because I liked doing it. And I liked promoting stuff, and I like when I make something for a DJ and it comes out really cool and they feel like it really like represents like their kind of style of playing music. That connection is really awesome. But yeah, I mean, the same with producing music. A lot of the time I work with artists, I'm not like, where's my paycheck? Because if you start like that, I mean, you start placing everything in terms of money, it really does like cheapen an experience. So I think just start. Don't, tip one, don't start, just start. And then don't worry about money, and don't worry about compensation and how's it going to work out for you. You really have to just be passionate about what you're doing to begin.
Yeah.
And then another thing we touched on is really just like don't pay attention to anybody else, especially like, I was another kind of interview that I was getting influenced by was this one DJ was talking about your diet, and he wasn't just talking about what you eat. He's like what you consume. Like, he's like, you could be in a great mood and you open up your phone and like one video or one thing, like, if you don't make a lot of content for yourself, like sometimes I get overwhelmed by making stuff for other people, that when it comes to my own stuff, I feel like I'm in neutral sometimes. And I feel like I get placed in neutral when I look at all the other stuff that everyone's doing. But if you think about it, it's like that's the whole purpose of that. I feel like it's just to kind of like everybody's posting stuff all the time. It's going to make you feel like you're less than because you're looking at this whole swath of people. But if you just focus on what you're doing and just kind of ignore everybody else's shit, I think you can keep your head on straight. But a lot of the content I make for people is not based out of. Sometimes I'll use popular sounds, but I don't do popular trends. I make really original content, and I don't really care about following any of that stuff. Why do you think things catch on TikTok? Like when something becomes a trend, it's because somebody had to create the trend or create the idea to begin with. So I guess if something was going to like blow up or whatever, I would say that I would push towards someone focusing on unique content, and don't worry about anything else, because unique content's going to draw people to whoever you're working with or whatever you're trying to promote for yourself. Just don't worry about anybody else's stuff. And I think number 3 is like the moment that things become like not fun, you got to just move on. You got to cut. You got to cut and run. If things are miserable and you just hate it, it's going to show through in your work. And people are so the last interview that I can compare to is watching a thing with Tim Heidecker, and he was like, I think people actually take things more on face value now. Like they see something on the internet and they immediately are like, oh, that must be true because that guy said that on there. So like, if you're not feeling it and you're not, passionate about it, that's going to be noticeable immediately. People are going to look at it and be like, I don't think this was made with intent, or I don't think that this person really thought this through, or they're not really excited about this brand or whatever. Brands that I really love that do cool stuff is like Ami Leon Dore. It's like I don't know if I'm saying it correctly because I've never like heard it said aloud, but fashion clothing company. They do amazing stuff. You can tell whoever's like running their stuff gives so much attention to detail to what they do, and it's so highly curated that it just demands respect. It's like that's why their clothing is like so expensive, but it's like they really do make you feel luxurious. It makes it look so cool, but you can tell whoever's behind their social media or whatever. Even like I was thinking the other day, I was like looking at like the Nintendo Instagram, and I was like, dude, whoever is like running this is just crushing it. Or like Lego, like they're so fun. They embody the brand in so many different ways. They get the fans involved. Like, I mean, all that stuff is really, watching the greats and watching accounts that like really excite you is another thing to like push you. Don't be overwhelmed by it, and don't start copying those people, but just be inspired and always be open to absorb. I think absorbing is like a really important thing. So yeah, don't listen to other people's stuff. Just start creating. And if it stops being fun, then just cut and run and push to something else. You don't owe anybody anything. When I was working in the restaurant industry, it's like they made you feel like you owe us for us giving you shifts. Like, what? That's such a wacky thing. Like, you're welcome that we employed you. Like, you're like, hey, listen, I come in here and like I put my ass in gear and work really hard for you every day. So like, you're kind of welcome that I'm giving myself to you just as much as you're giving yourself to me. So I don't know. You don't owe anybody anything. You got to just do what's best for yourself. Don't be like an asshole, but just like do what's best for you, you know, have fun. I mean, I feel like all that stuff is kind of like, I don't know. Sometimes like the most plain stuff is the best advice. Like even if it's like the most like we've heard all this stuff before. I feel like all those tips were very basic, but sometimes that's like people who are starting out really just need to hear the basics.
Yeah, no, right there. Like it sounds strange, but I like love cliches because when people it'll come out of someone's mouth differently every single time, even if it's the same message, kind of to what you were just saying.
Yeah.
But honestly, they're cliches like they're cliches because people relate to them and they're true most of the time. So sometimes you just need to keep hearing them, and then one time you'll hear it. Maybe this time when you just said it, that'll be the time for someone. It'll click. Right. And that will be the thing that'll get them to get going. Yeah. So I appreciate those tips. I think that
I had one more.
Sense.
I just thought of
bonus
one more.
tip.
Yeah, bonus tip. This is one that I actually thought about last night, and it's one that I'm learning right now, and it's one that I'm getting better at. But I was going to say these are kind of both intertwined. I guess they could be their own separate tips, but basically like know your value and your worth, and also have boundaries. Because like I was passionate, excited, and started making stuff for a bunch of friends of mine, especially like when you're making beats. You just like make beats, and you don't charge anything, like, and you don't ever bring it up. And at some point in the future, maybe you do want to bring it up, then it kind of becomes a little awkward. Like sometimes, definitely like start and make fun and be passionate about it. Don't make it about money or whatever. But when it comes to like the realism of if you want to do that for a career with like new clients that you get that aren't your friends, you got to set boundaries, and you have to be like, actually this is worth this much, or you just got to pay me something. Even with rappers and stuff like that, sometimes I'm like, I need you to pay me $10, $20, just any kind of like to show me that you care like in that way about what I'm creating for you, rather than just me making it and throwing it into the abyss of, you know, whatever. So I would say, knowing your worth, because like when you start out as an entrepreneur and you're fully working for yourself, what is this worth? I mean, social media is a really hard to quantify thing because it's
impossible.
It's impossible. You can't say like if you hire me, I'll definitely bring you 5,000 followers. You're like, I mean, I hope that happens. I don't know if it'll happen. Like it definitely probably won't. But but like setting boundaries with new clients and things like that, and also just like setting a little bit of a schedule for yourself. Since you're just completely floating on there all the time. So to not go crazy, you got to give yourself a little bit of like, I don't answer my phone after 7, because social media people are usually like, people are like, I need you to make this thing by 8 a.m. tomorrow.
That's me.
Yeah. So
boundaries, value, all those things are super important. And it's to your point, like it's hard, especially if you're just starting out, to kind of figure out where to set those, how to set those, how much to set those prices. So that I think that's really great advice. And luckily there's a lot of resources out there to kind of help with that. But I tell you what, it is still tricky. So I appreciate that extra bonus tip. That one's huge.
Yeah. That was actually one that I thought of and was like, that's a good tip.
It's good. It's good. It makes like if someone, I hope someone is super inspired by this conversation and they're like, you know what, I can do social media better than this place down the block, and then they're gonna have
better,
this tip
but
ready for them.
Better, but
enhanced. Yes.
Yeah.
Different.
For sure.
A different perspective.
Yeah. Indeed.
But that is awesome. Okay, so that is about our time, but I want to make sure that anyone listening can find you. Where can people find you on the internet?
I think for Instagram, it's king_jmoss, JMOSS. And I think I kept that the same for everything else, for YouTube and for TikTok or whatever. I don't know. It's all whatever. You know, you can find me on there.
He's out there, people.
I'm out.
He's around.
Yeah.
I'll make sure to put in the show notes. I think that's what podcasters say. I'll put in the show notes links to all of Jay Moss's socials and things like that. If you're in Rochester and you're really cool and you're willing to do cool stuff and you're looking for someone to make you some social media things, maybe look them up, maybe check them out. But I just want to say a big thank you for being on the show. This has been really cool. Great to catch up. Great to dive into some of these things where we don't normally get to talk about. So I appreciate your time. And you're awesome, dude.
Dude, I appreciate you. You're awesome for doing this show. So thanks for having me on, man.
Thank you for listening to yet another episode of the Pursuit of Creativity podcast. If you enjoyed hearing Jordan's story and got some value from it, be sure to leave a review, share with a friend, or at least give it a rating. It really helps the show out. For more insightful content, be sure to check out BelieveDivergent.com or the Believe Divergent Instagram. Once again, thank you for watching. I'm your host, Ikey, and as usual, stay optimistic. Better days are coming.